a lot of times people aren't, taking the time to build out a detailed scope of work. I mean, this is exactly the challenge that I faced when I stepped into that construction business. Just back of the envelope, good old boy handshake type deals, and like, you get into the project though, and now it's a bunch of finger pointing, saying, well, he said, she said,
Yeah.
like, because we didn't know what was included. Nobody knew what was included. It was just a conversation with no documentation. I see a lot of builders not taking the time to create a very detailed scope of work and making sure that it is crystal clear what is included and what is excluded.
This episode of Professional Builders Secrets is brought to you by Apparatus Contractor Services. Apparatus provides full scope, end-to-end QuickBooks precision construction accounting and CFO services for residential builders. If you feel like you can't completely trust your weekly and monthly financial reports, or you feel like you're flying blind, Apparatus will rebuild and operate your QuickBooks accounting system and give you precision construction accounting capability you can trust. Learn more at apparatusteam.com or on the APB Rewards Partner Directory. Professional Builder Secrets Live. I'm here with Eric Fortenberry from JobTread. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Appreciate it.
The fastest growing construction management software in America, I believe.
I believe so too.
Very good. You've had a great show by the sounds of it. Just got a couple of booths away, but what have you been your big takeaways so far?
I mean, it's just a really exciting time to be here. Having all of these people, in one place, dedicating their time to learning, to growing, to finding new solutions to help them improve their business. I mean, that's the most exciting thing, I think. We've had huge turnout at our booth. It's been awesome to be able to meet so many new builders, contractors who want to join us, as well as just all of our clients, our partners. We just love spending that time, the face-to-face. I think it really means a lot, and just helps us to deepen those relationships.
Yeah, it makes a big difference meeting people in person, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm fascinated to hear more about your backstory. You were just telling me before JobTreads, fully self-funded and everything like that. Can you tell me a bit more about how it all started?
Yeah, so I basically sold my first company in 2015. We worked with higher education, provide software to colleges and universities, and ended up taking that all over the world and had just a really awesome business there. But timing just kind of meant it's time to go on to the next thing, and ended up buddy of mine was running a construction company, just needed some help figuring out how to scale his business. He had 10 employees. They're doing about $5 million in revenue. I think they were just under 5 years old, so had gotten through a lot of those early challenges, kind of breaking through $1 million and getting up to $5 million. But it reached a point where he just was hitting this glass ceiling and just couldn't break through. Was really struggling to figure out how to scale the business, and asked me to come over and said, "Hey man, can you help me figure out what I can do? Like I'm just at a loss here." And when I walked in, I mean, it was just like total chaos. They had papers, binders. The timesheets were literally walking in the door, going into a folder. They'd print out all their bills and receipts and everything, and put it in a folder. Wait for the project manager, whenever that was, to come and initial it to approve it, and then someone would manually type it into a spreadsheet. And then it got typed over, copied to this other spreadsheet, then someone entered it into QuickBooks. And my mind almost exploded with the inefficiency, right? And I was just like, whoa, guys, what are we doing here? Like, I immediately saw the problem, and I was just like, look, you need to find some software. Like, let me go help you. I'll go find it. We'll figure out how to get it implemented. And I did a deep dive into the whole construction management space. I mean, I literally looked at everything out there. Made a big spreadsheet of all the the features, the pros, the cons, the price, and like at the end of the day, though, like I struggled to make a recommendation for them. I felt like everything was either like super antiquated, looked like it was going to be complicated to get implemented or customized to meet our needs, or super expensive. And I struggled. I struggled to make a recommendation for the guys, and they started pushing me a little bit and saying, "Well, you're a software guy. Can't you just build us something?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Whoa, hold on. I'm not trying to create another one off here. Like, you guys are not software guys. Like, there's no way you're going to be able to maintain this." I wasn't looking for a full-time job. But they kept pushing me, and I began thinking like, man, like this is just like my first company. Like the education industry was just like lagging in technology, but very small industry. Now we came to the other end of the spectrum here with the construction industry. I mean, like enormous industry, but again, lagging in technology. And I just kind of came around and said, look, I'm willing to do it under 3 conditions. 1, I take over CEO. 2, I give you 1 year of my time, undivided attention. And 3, everything I build is my intellectual property. So if this has the potential to become my next software company, then, I can, after that 1 year, I can go run with it. And, they essentially agreed, made me partner and CEO of the business. And I took over and I built this out of a needs basis. We started focusing on, the estimating, kind of got all that built out. And like the core of JobTread is really our budgeting feature, the financials. So we got that going. Then we turned to the operations, the project management side. And then lastly, turned to the back office and really focused on getting all the accounts receivable, accounts payable, getting all that tied in together, integrated into QuickBooks. And long story short, that we grew this from 5 to 8 million in sales, and we increased their gross profit by 43%.
Yeah.
And, at the end of that year, I basically thanked him for a crash course in construction. And, I knew, though, this is too good to leave sitting there with that one company. And so we started JobTread in 2019, recruited my best developers, designers. And, we started built for a couple of years. We started selling it in 2021. We got to around 200 companies that year. Next year, we got it to 1,000. Year after that, 2,200. Last year, we ended around 4,500 customers. Here at the booth in just a couple months, we've already picked up like over 1,000 new customers this year. So it's like just growing very, very quickly on us.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think I remember last year at the show, there was murmurs all over the place about, have you heard about JobTread? Have you heard about JobTread? And it's just kind of gone from strength to strength over the last 12 months. That's cool. What's the value prop for you guys? Like, does it come back to that core problem you were trying to solve around affordability and usability?
I tell people all the time, like, look, we're not like reinventing the wheel here. Like the fundamentals of managing a construction project, they really haven't changed.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're providing an easier to use, easier to learn application at a much more affordable price. I'm very passionate about, believing that software should be affordable for all size businesses. I feel like a lot of times you see a lot of these bigger companies out here, they take a bunch of private equity funding. They start to kind of think, we got to, increase our price and focus on our ROI. And that just leads them to start pricing out the small guys.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about entrepreneurs, giving back to the entrepreneurial community and helping businesses, and so I think, again, a solo owner operator shouldn't pay the same thing as a 50 person or 100 person company. And so we're just trying to deliver the solutions that they need to be able to take their business, to get everything organized in one place, and to be able to like know their numbers, understand their processes, like put these things in place. Like so many of these, these business owners, these entrepreneurs, they've got it all in their head. Yeah. And they may be great at it, but like that's not scalable. Like you got to set up systems and processes so that you can build out your team and so that you can take on more projects, larger projects, and not risk getting into a deep financial trouble. One job, like if you don't manage the cash flow, that could literally sink these businesses. Yeah. And so we're just really passionate about giving them the tools that they need, making it easy for them to implement the software, to afford it, and to build better businesses.
Yeah, one thing we've seen, we've done research for 5 years now into remodelers and custom home builders across 4 countries. And the reduction in use of spreadsheets has just dramatically fallen off a cliff, especially in the last 12 to 18 months. Do you think that you've kind of come in at the perfect opportunity where people are realizing that they need software in their company?
Yeah, I definitely think the stars aligned. Yeah. With the timing of when we built this and just kind of how everything's transpired. And it's something that we're also seeing. I think a lot of people are starting to realize that in order to continue growing and thriving in this industry, you're going to have to adopt technology. You're going to need to use software and find better, processes. A lot of times these builders, they've been doing it for 40, 50 years and they get stuck in their ways. Yeah. And unfortunately that what worked, back then isn't going to work, tomorrow. And so, I think people are starting to really clue in on that. And we do see a big shift now happening in the industry. Again, just like the fact that, like you can literally, integrate, your measurement tools, pull that into your budget, with a couple clicks in a matter of minutes, generate a beautiful looking proposal that's already got these selection options. Like, if you're trying to compete against that and you're still using spreadsheets and pen and paper, you really have no chance.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're meant to be talking about project efficiency, so let's try to get back on track with that. We can come back and talk more about JobTread later on. What does project efficiency mean to you, and how does it play into the customer experience?
I think it's about taking, your a very complex problem, right? Like construction is got a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of moving pieces. Depending on the type of work, you got a lot of different people, different subs. There's just so many components to being able to efficiently and effectively manage a construction project that, for me, I think the way to make sure that you are as efficient as possible is by getting organized and by leveraging, some sort of software technologies, tools that will help you to bring all of that into one place and to get everyone who's involved in the process like on the same page, singing from the same, hymnal here, like being able to like work together to make sure that we're accomplishing everything that needs to happen in the right order, because there's a lot of like dependencies, there's a lot of moving parts that like if you're not organized within one project, well, when you start getting additional projects, running multiple projects at the same time, like there's just that potential for everything to sort of spin out of control.
Yeah.
And so I think for people to, really be as efficient as possible, they need to leverage these solutions out there that will help them bring that all into one place.
How do you solve those problems for so many different types of builders? So, you got remodelers, which is a much more complex running of a project compared to a custom home builder
Sure.
or a spec builder or whatever it is. So how do you provide a solution for all those different builders?
We do have a very wide array of the types of builders, from, home builders, remodelers, pool builders, deck builders, commercial GCs, roofers, painters. I mean, like we very intentionally design JobTread to work for any sized business and any type business, as long as you're in the construction space and you're selling construction jobs where you're custom bidding all of these jobs. You could have, a 1 line item budget. Not that I recommend that, but you could, up to, 1,000 line item in your budget. Like it's up to you. But like we very intentionally have focused on making sure that you can customize the content. And so like every builder, they've got their own catalog that they can curate, that they can create their own, custom fields, their own processes, workflows. I know a lot of the stuff out there, a lot of the other solutions, like it's kind of like, your way or the highway. Well, that was the big thing that I ran against when I was trying to figure out and find a solution for my construction business. And so, we very intentionally have designed this to be flexible and customizable for all the different types of businesses. But look, at the end of the day, like as much as a lot of these people think, kind of their business is special and different, like the fundamentals of managing construction projects and really managing construction businesses, they're really not that different. And so like when you have that core functionality set that addresses those needs and those challenges, then, it really just comes down to kind of the type of business and customizing the content that they're using within their product.
Okay. So talk to me about managing projects. What are some of the problems that turn up throughout, like consistent problems that builders are seeing across their projects, which can be aided with a good software?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first and foremost, I mean, a lot of times people aren't, taking the time to build out a detailed scope of work, budgeting out their cost. I mean, this is exactly the challenge that I faced when I stepped into that construction business. Like, we were, just back of the envelope, good old boy handshake type deals. And like, you get into the project though, and now it's a bunch of finger pointing saying, well, he said, she said,
Yeah.
like, lacking that documentation up front, that forced us to not be able to use change orders because we didn't know what was included. Nobody knew what was included. It was just a conversation with no documentation. And I see that a lot. I see a lot of builders not taking the time to create a very detailed scope of work and making sure that it is crystal clear what is included and what is excluded. That's the number one thing that, just people need to take that time to make sure they do that. And you gotta, I know a lot of people, they want to just say yes to everything.
Yeah.
And they want to just, help them out in that one more thing. But a lot of times the client will take advantage of that, and you gotta be able to draw the line. And it helps when you have your contract and you have that scope, where you can point back to and say, look, that just wasn't included. We're happy to do it. We'd love to do it. We think it's a great idea, but that will be a change order.
Yeah.
And so, I think that, and then the other big thing though, I think that, a lot of builders don't always understand is that even if you build a great product and you deliver a phenomenal, just build, whatever it may be, if the customer's experience throughout that project was subpar, you still lost.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, 5-10 years down the road, like your clients are not going to remember the nitty gritty of the build. They're going to remember the experience that they had and how you made them feel. We all know that construction's complicated. Things are going to come up. Unforeseen circumstances are going to happen. Mistakes are going to happen. And that's just par for the course. But it's all about how you handle when those situations come up. Are you transparent with the client? Do you go to them proactively and say, hey, we found this issue, but here are some potential solutions and here's what we recommend. I think it's all about how you handle those issues. Just ignoring it and burying it and, or putting it on some punch list and not saying anything like that, that's not going to lead to a great experience. And so, I really encourage builders to, to be as transparent as they can. With JobTread, I mean, you have like a client portal and it's permission based, so you can decide how much you want to share. But like, I'm such a big proponent of like, again, like open it up, make the client feel like they're part of the journey with you, and give them that visibility into the schedule. I'm not saying like share every single like, item, but the high level, the milestones, like when are we going to be out there?
Yeah.
What are we going to be doing? The daily logs, the files, like letting them see what's happening, even when, they're even when things aren't happening. A lot of times there is something back in the office, and just quick little notes. I think it really improves that client experience. And so I actually just had my pool built with a JobTread contractor. So I got to be the homeowner, be that end user. And like these things, like, sharing the schedule, the daily logs, like it took that experience to a whole nother level for us. And then being able to have all the communications in one spot, like it made the project so much more seamless for us. And, I really encourage builders to think long and hard about how they can focus more on that client experience.
It's important for you, I guess, to experience that from the other side, right? So you can build that into the experience of the product.
Yeah, it was super neat, to first be the contractor, build it from that perspective, but then be able to be the end user, the client was also very, very valuable.
I want to come back to client experience in a moment. I just wanted to touch on what you mentioned about change orders, because I've heard that a fair bit actually over the last couple of days. If you don't have that detailed contract at the front end, it can kind of go one of two ways. Either the builder decides, I'm just going to consume that myself because I'm too scared to go to the customer and tell them they need to pay more.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to get them to pay more and they're going to be upset and disgruntled and maybe not refer me to anyone or give me a bad review. So you're kind of in between a rock and a hard place, right? You either make no profit or, you've got an unhappy customer.
Yeah, and that's where I think, to the extent that you can always, fall back on the original contract, kind of the scope of work, it's just so much easier when you have those details and you have those exclusions. Having a really solid contract, is so important. And I feel like a lot of people, they kind of learn the lesson the hard way the first time, and then they go and they put that into place. For a nominal amount, like hire an attorney, make sure you have an ironclad contract that you can sort of just, again, it's not about feeling, it's not about emotion, it's about being able to point back to, hey, here's what we, agreed to do. I've got a schedule to run. We have a business to run. Like, you got to just be open. And, I think the little things, awesome, sure, just knock them out.
Yeah.
If it's not going to, directly affect the bottom line, hopefully you put a little bit of padding in a couple places where, the little things, I think you go do them. But if they're wanting big changes, there is a real cost to that. And if they don't understand that, then I think you might need to educate them a little bit more about all of the various factors that come into play when trying to change a schedule or trying to change the designs or needing to get additional materials or things that you've already purchased. I mean, this is all just kind of part of the process, that to the extent that you can educate your clients going in what it's like to go through a build, I think that will sort of help give you a little bit more ammo, when you need to kind of go through that change order process.
Yeah, you made a great point there. If you've got the scope of work and the expectations are set from the very beginning, and you're working with the right type of client, of course, then it shouldn't be, a hard conversation to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, talk to me about the client experience. Trust is so big in this industry because, to be honest, there's a lot of consumers out there that just don't trust builders. Yeah. So how does all of the things you were talking about from that client experience, the communication aspect, help with building trust?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even just to touch on something else, I mean, I feel like there is a very, it's a small group of, just, subpar contractors who they really have, tarnished the reputation of the industry as a whole, by going out there, not knowing their numbers, underpricing their jobs, cutting corners, just trying to be that, that bottom of the barrel, low price provider. And ultimately, what happens is that, they struggle, they can't pay their guys enough. They can't manage the cash flow. They're going to ultimately end up, likely screwing over the end customer. And then that's where, again, those stories get out there, and it gives the industry as a whole that bad reputation, and so I think to the extent that, like, up front, you have to position, your service for the value that it is, and that you are a higher tier, a premium contractor who's going to be able to be organized and knows their numbers, is going to manage the cash flow, is going to give the client transparency. And that's where, again, having technology from the very first moment you're sending out your proposals to the whole client portal, showing the customers how the job will run, showing them other customers and how you've run their jobs, and letting them see what that experience is going to be like. That brings a lot of confidence, and it builds that trust. I know that, a lot of our contractors, they say that they use, JobTread in the sales process, not just the proposal stuff, but like they show that experience. They say, hey, this is what your portal is going to look like. This is how you're going to receive information, how you can, sign off on proposals and change orders and make your selections and pay your invoices. Like, having it all in one place, it really helps keep people on the same page. And so, I think to the extent, again, I'm a big proponent of just being an open book, sharing as much as you're able and comfortable to share with the client, because that builds that trust and that gives them that confidence that you're not going to just take their money and run. To the extent that, like, all of these builders, we need to help them, to be able to elevate their own game. We need those guys who are cutting those corners, to realize that, like, there's a better way and you can do it the right way. But we can't give these things away. Like, people need to make money to build successful businesses. And so I think once we can help elevate them, like, we need everybody to have this abundance mentality, right? Like, there is enough food for everyone, and your competition, like, you can collaborate with them. Figure out what is their strength, what are your strengths. Like, I see people all the time now that are meeting in their local markets. They're like, look, I'm a high-end remodeler. I don't want the new builds. I'm going to give it over to you. You're a new builder. Well, you don't want the smaller remodel projects. Send them to me. Like, you can work together. And I think that's ultimately how we're going to raise, the industry as a whole and provide a lot more confidence back to the end consumer.
It's a great point. And, like, learning from your peers is one of the best ways to, jump the queue, right? And find out what you need to find before making all the mistakes. Okay. So talk to me about how this can impact a builder's bottom line, their company, their life, all those kind of things. You gave an example of the original building company that you worked on with JobTread, but what's that transformation like?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the number one thing that builders need to do is know their numbers. Like, they need to understand, are they accurately pricing their jobs? When I first took over this construction company, we did a lot of different types of work, but I found that every time we did fencing jobs in this one market, we were losing 10 to 12%. And this went on for like 6 months. And I was like, how is this even possible? I actually suspected that there was some sort of fraud or kickback going on, or like, and I didn't know. And so when I started diving in, though, I found that we had never updated our price of the material. And so we were literally, and this is work for a very large builder that we were doing, like, we were literally paying them to repair and put up their fences. Like, that's just like asinine. And that went on for like 6 months. Like, you have to take the time to know and understand your numbers, to take that time to analyze your performance. You should be doing performance reviews after every job. Whether you do it, every week, every other week, once a month, like, find the right cadence for your business and take that time. But this is where, by leveraging software and technology, you can now start to quantify all of this information. It's not, it doesn't need to be about emotion and feeling about how someone performed. Leverage the data. Show them. We found another time, where we were working with a lot of different types of crews. And I found that, like, some of these crews were able to hit, kind of the targets that they gave us. And some were just all over the map, and like understanding and starting to get in there and quantify and track their performance, that will help you to better coach them and help them see how they can improve so that you have better numbers. And ultimately, like, by leveraging, software technology, like, every builder, every entrepreneur I know, like, they're grinding, they're working way more than they probably should. And so, like, when you can leverage, processes that are either fully automated, more automated, like, it helps you to streamline and become much more efficient. And ultimately, like, this is going to win your time back. I can't tell you
Which
the number.
Which is the most important thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people that have, like, come up to us and, like, Eric, like, you literally have given me so much more time with my family. You've saved my marriage. Like, these challenges that come from disorganization, like, they can be solved by, like, getting on the same page, being able to communicate and again, take the emotion out of it, leverage the data, and make quantitative, data-driven decisions.
What kind of data are you looking at after a project to do that analysis?
I mean, I'm a big proponent of, when you build out your budgets, like you don't have like some people, will track every box of nails and screws and like, I think that's great. At the end of the day, though, like my recommendation is you make sure that you understand all of your key cost drivers, all of the large equipment, all of the, the large material purchases, like the things that are going to move the needle, your labor. If you're doing it internal with your own, field crews, like you need to understand your production rates. If you're doing it with subcontractors, great. You need to make sure that you're getting the bids and that you're putting them in there, and then you're comparing their actuals. Like the ability to continually run jobs without analyzing the end profit, you have to understand like where are you making money and where are you losing money.
Yeah.
It could be buried in a huge, array of line items. But when you can do and take the time to do the job costing on a line by line basis, that's going to very quickly point you to where you're overrunning your budget. Where are you underestimating how long it's going to take to accomplish certain tasks?
Yep.
And so by collecting that data, by tracking time, by tracking all of your, your estimated budget, your commitments, your bills, by leveraging all of that, you can start to get very, very, granular and fine tune your costing. It can be very surgical. Like for us, again, we found one single area, but it was a huge key cost driver that we were just misbidding. We had the wrong cost. And so those are the things that I like to get in there and look at, both your material, how did you track against your estimated cost, and then your labor, and ultimately, the gross profit on the job is a very good indicator.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you can find those costs and inefficiencies in the process, you can improve your margins, then you can invest more in the business. That helps you grow. It just all works together.
100%. And I think too, from a scheduling standpoint, like not just like in the budget, but like, we have a feature where like you can like literally set the baseline for what was the expectation going into this project. And then as things shift, I mean, again, it could be weather, it could be, shipping delays, who knows what, it could be any sort of factor, but like you shift out your schedule. And so then at the end, you can go back and look and it shows you exactly where you got off track. So again, you have to though take action. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different outcome, it's like the definition of insanity, right? When you find information and ways to improve, like you need to go update your templates, go, add some more padding into the schedule where you see you're constantly getting off. Go address the production rate issue. Go figure out like, what are you doing? How did you make a mistake? Where did you lose money? And quit making that same mistake over and over. Make changes, implement those changes, and move forward.
Makes sense. Okay, where do you see all of this going in the next 12 to 18 months? I mean, there's been so much rapid change with AI recently. There's so many construction management softwares out there now. You guys have been growing rapidly, of course, yourself. What are you doing over the next 12 to 18 months to help improve the efficiency of builders, and where do you see it going?
I mean, at the end of the day, there is, we see every year a lot of people try to kind of build something and they come up for a minute and then they go back down. I mean, just kind of like ankle biters. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the companies that have the best products, the best technology, the ones that listen to their customers and they focus on their customers' needs and their feedback. Those are the ones that are going to end up becoming the large dominant players. We believe that all of our customers are our partners. We have a very, very active JobTread pros Facebook community. It's like 5,500 members in there. They're all JobTread users, but like, being able to, listen to their feedback and make changes, and implement that. Like at the end of the day, like we no longer have to solve all of these problems ourselves. We have this like huge, over, 5,000 customers who are here, day in, day out using the product. And I think the companies that are able to take their feedback and actually implement it are the ones that are going to end up, building the most value for this industry as a whole. Again, it's easy to kind of create a website and kind of get a little shell of a product going, but it's the ones who are truly, working with their customers hand in hand, I think will be the ones that will continue to grow and to thrive in this industry.
How are you determining that product's timeline? I imagine you're probably getting, if you've got 5,500 customers all in the one group, and you're getting feedback from everyone, it's probably hard to weed through and determine what that roadmap looks like.
Yeah. So what we did is we implemented on our help desk a feature request board. And so you can go in there, we make them kind of search for, make sure whatever their feature request isn't already in there, because it probably is.
Yeah.
They can sort it by most popular, but that directly feeds into our product development roadmap where all of our developers we can see the highest, voted feature requests and the things that are going to make the biggest impact to our clients. And so that's what we prioritize is based on those things. I know a lot of companies out there kind of price based on features, and they move them from one tier to the next. Like with JobTread, like everything, it's all included. We just like built our own on-screen takeoff tool and added it in there for no additional cost. Like, I mean, that's how you disrupt an industry, right? Is you come in and you add these things where there's entire companies doing that, but like at the end of the day, like we want to make sure that we're doing the things that are going to make the biggest impact for all of our users. And so whether it's a small thing, a big thing, a new feature, an update to an existing feature, like taking that feedback and being able to, again, quantify it and sort it by the most popular, it makes it a lot easier than us having to kind of figure it out. It's
of course, you're not making any guesses. You're using the data.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like you recommend to the builders. Well, Eric, thanks so much for coming on Professional Builder Secrets. I've had a lot of fun. And for anyone listening at home, check out JobTread. Highly recommend checking out JobTread. If you're an APB member, look on our rewards directory. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on, Will.
Awesome. Cheers, man.